Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's nice to have this audience in front of me. Welcome to this composer's talk. My name is Ruben De Gheselle, and today we have with us, I think, a truly remarkable and world-class musical talent. She makes, I had the honor to sit a bit with her music, and I think she makes the most wonderful melodies. I think melodies that even John Williams would be jealous of. It's really catchy themes, beautiful themes, and she's also an expert orchestrator, in my humble opinion. So please, for today, give us a very warm welcome to Debbie Wiseman. So I'm a Dutch person with a Kantian R, so speaking English is always a bit difficult, but we will do our best. Debbie. A bit maybe first about your background. When did you, for the first time, felt like an urge that you said, like, okay, I want to be a film composer?
I think I always preferred writing rather than playing. Although I have, at college, studied classical piano. I studied classical piano, classical composition. So they always went alongside. And it's lovely that they do, because I think to be able to play an instrument is so important, to be able to know how it feels at the piano, to play it. And my composition teacher actually said to me, when you write for the instrument, think about how it plays, and play a scale on every instrument of the orchestra if you can, so you understand how it feels. So when I was at college, I was trying to get a scale out of a trombone. You know, it's really hard. Or out of a trumpet, impossible. You know, these players, they study and they learn their craft for years and years, and they're wonderful musicians. But at least I had a go, and I knew how difficult it was. An oboe, my goodness, trying to get a note out of an oboe is really... I did try it. Okay, it's very, very hard. But piano is fine, because the keys are there for you, and you just have to... And it's also easy. And it sounds lovely, even if you're not very good at the piano. You know, you can violin, terrible if you can't play well. But piano is fine. And so to be able to play an instrument and understand the workings of an instrument is important. And when I write for the instruments, I think about how they're going to sound when they perform, and I think about the colour and the performance, and I want to write music that musicians want to play, because there's nothing worse than putting something in front of a musician and they look at it and they think, oh my goodness, what am I going to make of this? You want to put something in front of them that they think, oh, I'm excited to play this.
And so, if I understand correctly, in college, did you then try to play every instrument of the orchestra, or did you say, no, I stop at the tuba?
It was a task from my composition teacher, and it was just, an experiment, which I went around. But no, the only instrument that I can play professionally is the piano, and I studied percussion, timpani, tune percussion like marimba and all that, which is linked. Yeah. But to be able to play the piano well is all I can do. But it takes a lifetime to learn an instrument. So to try one instrument and to learn it well is a lifetime's work anyway. So that was enough. Mm-hmm. But I found I enjoyed writing more than playing.
Yeah. So you always keep then instruments in mind when you are writing, and that's maybe. Do you think it's maybe already quite in depth? But is this maybe already a craft that we tend to unlearn again, because like we use now samples and all these kind of things?
Well, it's interesting, because when I go to the Royal College of Music occasionally, they have a composition for screen course, and all the composers there sit at computers rather than at a piano, and they all sit at keyboards and play it right into the computer. Now, for me, because I come from a generation where the technology at the time when I was starting wasn't anything like as good as it is now. So for me, to be able to sit at a piano and that physical contact with the instrument, and to be able to get the dynamics and the phrasing right. And when I write for an instrument, I like to not only think about how it's going to sound, but also sometimes even think of the musician that I might want to play it. Is it going to be this particular flautist that I love, or this viola player that's got this intense, gorgeous sound? Sometimes it's even writing for that particular musician, as well as thinking about how it's going to sound. So I do think the traditional way of learning how to write for the instruments is a good tool to have. It doesn't mean there's no other way of doing it, and you can absolutely make fantastic music by not doing that. But because I come from a traditional classical background, it's so ingrained that I can't even give away the orchestration to anyone else. You know, when I think of a tune and a melody, I think of how it's going to sound on the instrument, and the two come side by side. So the writing and the orchestration of the music are side by side. So even doing that, you know, which is not unusual for people to do a top line and work out what's going on with the harmony, and then you give it to an orchestrator, even that, I'm such a control freak, I can't even do that, let it that away, because I like the whole thing. But that comes from the very strict classical training.
Okay, let's go straight into an example of this nice tune writing and orchestration. I think it's a beautiful transition. We have a first clip ready from Haunted, and afterwards I will ask you some questions about that clip. It takes 5 seconds to load in. So now you can all understand why I said that John Williams would be jealous. So yeah, this theme is super beautiful, and it's indeed a bit haunted at the same time. Could you tell us a bit maybe how it was constructed or how it was formed, this piano theme?
Because you see the pianist at the beginning play, it was the very first thing I wrote for that film, directed by the brilliant Gilbert, and it was the first opportunity I had to write music for him. And it was the first thing I wrote. We knew that she had to be playing it in vision, although you don't see her hands, so it wasn't particularly important that it had to she was actually miming along to the music afterwards. You don't see what she's playing. But that theme had to be something that I could twist and turn in different ways, because it became very dark towards the end of the story. And so although it's quite lyrical, and it's a supernatural love story, so the love story came from that theme with a big leap in it, and it felt quite romantic, but it could also be turned in different ways. And at the end, it becomes very spooky and very dark, and that was important. But I think, you know, it's the same with almost any film theme. If it doesn't have the ability to twist and turn it, but you can get stuck, because what do? You know, I like having something I can hold on to musically, a hook, whether it's a few notes or if it's a theme like that, because then it gives it its identity, it gives the movie its color, its unique musical language, and that's so helpful when you write the rest of the score.
And for example, here, this A to G sharp is like quite...
A big leap.
Yeah, big leap, and quite
very
significant.
clever, knowing A to G sharp.
Yeah, indeed.
Well done. Now that's technical.
Yeah,
but
yeah. It's a quite tenseful jump to make. But indeed, is this then what makes it maybe immediately a bit dubious and unresolved?
Yeah, I think so, because you've got to leap to that high note, and it does. It's also. I suppose it's a little trick that composers use when you want something yearning, or something that's romantic, or big leaps are helpful, because your ear naturally wants to go to them and understand what's going on, and it can be quite helpful rather than everything very, very close together, the notes very close together. But it's, you know, you have to come up with the idea, and you have to come up with the theme, but that came quite quickly, and I think because I knew that it would allow the film that lent itself to something quite romantic. Mm-hmm. There aren't many films like this now, so it was a good moment.
Yeah, indeed. And somebody to just give a quick thing. Somebody once said that once you leap, do a big leap, you have also, when you sing, you have to really like reach for it. And it's like almost the same feeling that you get with the audience, indeed. How important are these themes then in your musical language? Would you say that every time you make a film, you search for the right theme, and it's still like for you the way to crack the code of the film?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, whatever it is, whether it's television or film, finding a hook, finding a phrase, something that you can, that musically says that project. I mean, you know, with Wilde, the film about Oscar Wilde, it was that unsettled nature of Oscar Wilde. With Wolf Hall, I had Cromwell to play with, that very, you know, again, a difficult character, but the music had to tell these characters' stories. And if you can find something musically, and it takes time to do it, but if you can find something that really resonates with the characters, then the score becomes so much easier to write. Otherwise, I feel like I'm kind of a bit in the dark. And sometimes it takes a long time on the movie, and these are all on the album, by the way.
Great album, out now with Filmfest Gent.
Available
by
now.
Master WSA. Don't forget to order.
Exactly, available for pre-order. But the album, the choices on the album, because they're all melodic. But there's one movie on there called To Olivia, which you may not have seen, but it was a film about Roald Dahl. It was actually released during COVID, which was a shame because it didn't get as big a release as it deserved. Because it's such a lovely film. If you get a chance to watch it, do, because it's got Hugh Bonneville playing Roald Dahl, and he did a brilliant job. And Keeley Hawes plays his wife. But that theme took ages to write. And even though the film really spoke to me and I loved it, and I saw Hugh Bonneville is brilliant, and it's a tragic story, but it's very moving, it took me a really long time to come up with the theme, and I was trying out different things, and nothing clicked. And I really, at one stage, I thought, actually, this is never going to click. Everything sounded slightly wrong, not quite in sync with the guy. And then John Hay, the director, sent me something. I think he was worried if it was ever going to work. But he sent me a couple of ideas, like directors sometimes do, just to get, well, maybe not this, but something else. And it clicked. And I called him very late at 1 in the evening, and I played him down the phone on the piano, and I said, look, what do you think about this? And I think he breathed a sigh of relief, and he said, yeah, that's it. But I knew I had it. I knew it. When you've got something that's right.
Okay, super nice. You already mentioned some projects that we will see also
today.
Yes. Yeah, super great. I propose that we go straight into the clip of Wilde that you already mentioned. It takes 5 seconds to load. So Debbie, in this sequence, we have clearly 2 very different musical styles that you propose us in quick succession. Was this challenging to score this kind of?
Well, I always use this film as a kind of, when I talk to students about what you need to be a film composer, I always use this as an example, because it shows that you really have to be able to turn your hand to almost anything, even within one film. So it starts, surprisingly, with Oscar Wilde's Tour of America, and you've got this Wild West theme, and then it immediately goes to that more Baroque music, Victorian London, within the space of, we only watched 5 minutes of the film, but within...
even.
Less,
4, yeah.
4 minutes. So in 4 minutes, you've got those 2 very, very different styles of music. And so it's a really good example of how you need to be able to do almost anything when you're a film composer. Nothing should really be off limits. This was a very, for me it was an important film because it opened a lot of doors, certainly career-wise, because it had an impact. Stephen was brilliant as playing Oscar Wilde, but for me it was a difficult production because I was brought in so late in the day, and they had problems in the production. I wasn't the first composer, and then I was brought in with 3.5 weeks to write that music. Yeah. To write the whole score. So about 70 to 75 minutes of music in the film, 3.5 weeks. And it was no sleep, little bit of food, no sleep. But, it's so strange, though, when most film composers here and, will completely get this. But when you are put in that position, the adrenaline kicks in and just somehow you do it. And thinking back now, it seems extraordinary to have done that, or that anybody would ask you to do that and expect you to be able to do it, But you sort of do, the adrenaline kicks in and you do it. And we recorded that Abbey Road with Abbey Road Studios in London with a 75-piece orchestra. And I barely remember anything about it. I think because I was
Just
probably
rush,
so
like.
tired. But I barely remember anything about the recording other than it was very, very fast. And everything had to be done very, very fast and just had to be delivered. And everybody was very tense. And, it's just got to be good. And everybody's saying it's got to be good, And
Okay.
you better do it right, because we haven't got a chance to do it again. And so there was all that going on.
Yeah,
But
right.
I look at it now and it makes me smile because I do know that everybody, all composers here will completely understand.
And then for the two, because you also have two very different teams, but also two very different orchestrations. Did you in any way, because for me it sounds really two times very on point to say like that, it seems to have like we had almost two different composers, but you still feel your identity, but like two very different expertises that were brought in a way.
Yeah, I mean that opening theme had to have a bit of an Irish flavour to it, a little nod to Oscar's Irish roots, and that was the purpose behind that. But again, the director was nervous about it all because there was so little time. I just wrote everything, the whole score was first draft. There wasn't a chance to do a second draft. So in some ways that's good because you sort of you work on your instincts and everything. I mean, Constance's theme, which is on the album, and that's at the end of the suite, which actually we hear in the concert. The director's only note to me was, I think this should be really beautiful. I think you should write a really beautiful theme. I mean, I will try to write a really beautiful theme. You haven't given me very long to come up with something. I'll do my absolute best. But, you get these, and everybody was so nervous and wanting it to be good. And, I remember the producer coming round and saying to me, you better pull it out the bag, you haven't got and so much pressure is heaped on you to do your work. But you kind of just have to trust your instincts and go with it. On the other hand, if you've got too much time, it's also not a good thing because then too many people can get involved and you have too many opinions and it's also not a good thing. So a happy medium.
Yeah, but this clearly gave it its fruits, its results. You already hinted to it, instinct, intuition. We talked about it also a bit before. Like for you, is there like an how important are instinct, intuition, and on the other hand, training, experience for you? Like, do you think are they both like very present in each creative process, or is it sometimes purely instinct? Let's go, and you can let go of all the knowledge you have as well.
I mean, it's a really good question. It's instinct, 100%, because you can't describe or explain to anybody how you come up with a theme.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like explaining how you put a sentence together.
Or like how you breathe.
Or how you breathe. How can you explain that? Why am I putting this sentence together in this particular... I don't know. It just comes out like that. Yeah. And it's the same with music. Why am I doing it? I don't know why. It's just... but people ask, they want to know, but you can't tell them because it's an instinct. But on the other hand, your training is very important because without that, you don't have the skills to...
Translate it
and deliver it properly. And also, I like to see things through. I like to write it, orchestrate it, conduct it at the end, and have that whole thing. Have the whole process. It's magical. And then at the end, you feel so proud that you've done something that is all yours. I'm not being greedy. I just want it to be,
involved.
Involved. I just want to be involved, and I want to feel that it's. How, for good or bad, better or worse, it's yours, and you put it out into the world, and it either does well and people see it, or it doesn't and nobody sees it. But it doesn't, there's one of the tracks on the album, Lesbian Vampire Killers, which probably no one here will have seen. Now, it wasn't the biggest hit in the world, but it starred James Corden and Matt Horn, and it was aimed at 14-year-old boys, and it was hysterically funny. I thought it was very funny. But the film itself didn't do very well, but the music was so epic and such fun to write that it's become a kind of favourite. Yeah. Certainly for fans, it's become a kind of fan favourite because it's such fun. The music is so unleashed and so uninhibited, and that was fun. So sometimes if the film doesn't do very well, but the music still can live on, that's a lovely thing.
Yeah, it can be a lovely story in itself. Indeed, huh? Well, Nice words. Let's go to our next clip already, because time is running quickly, always with interesting guests. We are now going to watch a clip from Arsène Lupin. Was this fun to score this clip? Was it fun to do this one?
Well, that was the first scene that I was sent of the film, the very first scene. And the director, Jean-Paul Salomé, I don't know whether he shot that first or he just decided he was going to send that to me first, but he said, I'll send you a couple of scenes, you can have a look and give me back some demos of and that was the first scene.
Wow.
And can you
Quite
imagine?
a challenge.
Quite a challenge. Yeah. And but funnily enough, it was so good to do that first, because I got the theme. That theme in that iteration is very action-based, but it could also be quite romantic and quite comedic. So there was a lot I could do with that little slightly chromatic theme. But it was a wonderful theme to score, and just again, a bit like Lesbian Vampire Killers, it had everything: comedy, drama, action.
Great orchestration as well.
Again, thank you. But it was again 2 hours of music with a director that didn't speak very good English. I don't speak very good French. We ended up doing that or that, and that's how we communicate. But music is a universal language, and we didn't really need any much more than that. It was amazing.
Just imagine how it was in the room. So this also has some James Bond quality to it. Is this like the chromatism and or how did you develop this sound of? I mean, you have this almost spy feel, eh?
Arsène Lupin, if you know the books, he is like a James Bond character, a mixture of Raffles and James Bond, a gentleman jewel thief. So it needed that kind of expanse of sound. Again, we recorded at Abbey Road with a big orchestra. Just the most thrilling experience. It really was.
And do you think, because you have such a broad career and so many directors that you work with, do you think that each director has over the years or maybe over the project its own unique musical voice as well? Or do you think it's more linked to the project, or how do you see it?
Well, the director has a musical voice. Well, that's a really interesting question. I don't think the director necessarily does. Mm-hmm. With Peter Kosminsky on Wolf Hall, he is quite unique in that he wants to be so involved with the music, and it's always very spare and very little... he would never want anything sentimental or over the top, so the music's always very pared back. So he perhaps does. Other directors, I think it's more about their visual voice, and the music has to fit in with that, and that can change over their career. So directors have all sorts of different, areas that they want to delve into. They don't necessarily stick to one genre.
And what would be your if a director and a composer come in a room, sit in a room, and what would be your advice to have an efficient and productive production process and creative process to work together? What is the most important thing for you that they should have, or what they would watch out?
Don't talk crotchets and quavers and instruments and when most of the time when directors come over to listen to me, I talk to them about food or something different. Talk to them about what would they like for their lunch or I talk to them about the characters and I talk to them about the story, but try not to get into too much detail at that early stage about the mechanics of it, because if somebody says to you, and I've had this, I really don't like saxophones, or I really don't like a clarinet. Can you just steer clear? It can invade a little bit in your creative process, because you might have just thought a saxophone would be the most amazing instrument, and already you've had one thing taken away from you. And the clarinet, I don't like clarinet, so that's taken away from you, and you're limiting what could be possible in the score. I like an open book, open piece of manuscript paper is amazing, and to have that is much better. But directors, they are called directors for a reason, because they like to direct, and they like to direct everything, and
They
that
like to
includes the
control or
music.
something. Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
have to be directed, and as
Yeah.
a composer, your job is to collaborate, not to have a big ego and say, no, I don't want your direction, I just want to do my own thing. That wouldn't go down very well at all. But at least, if you have one director that has a good vision, that's great. I haven't done very many commercials, but I did a commercial many, many years ago called Mr. Crush, and it was an orange drink. And I was told that I had to write something happy and jolly for this orange drink. And 7 people came over to listen to the music. Creative directors, producers, directors. And I played them my theme. And then after about a minute, one of the creatives said to me, and plucked up the courage to say it, I don't think it sounds quite orange enough. And so you have to then translate that into music. And what he actually meant was that it didn't sound happy enough and bright enough.
Yeah.
So your job as a composer sometimes is to be a translator.
Yeah. And sometimes it's better to have this function of translation than that director is saying like, oh, can you move this note to the left or this note to the right or this a bit higher, and then
it's that can be difficult because music has its own natural flow, and you try and start to unpick it and put it back together again. It's tough. Yeah.
And if I don't know if you ever get into a creative difference, how do you solve it? How do you try to get out of it?
Well, there's been so many. I mean, there's always creative differences. You just have to, in the end, you are there to serve the picture. And it's difficult, but you have to put your ego to one side and say, okay, it's not exactly what I would have done if I was left to my own devices, but it's your film and it's your vision, and you as a composer must serve that vision, or you walk away. It's one or the other. So you have to decide how bad bad the creative tension is. Generally, there's a way around it. And I think actually, we talk about, being a female composer. I think having female intuition, a little bit of empathy, being able to understand what's going on in the director's head can sometimes help. Having a softer approach can sometimes help. But I think to get inside the director's head, understand what they want, but you are there to serve that film. Otherwise, you need to go and do something else. Be a concert hall composer, or write for other mediums. Because if you can't collaborate and take direction, then
film
it won't
composing
work.
is not for you. I just want to touch on first one last question before we go to questions and answers, because I want to have some opportunity for you to also ask questions. But what struck me when we first had the talk in preparation of this talk was that you said like, I always write down on a manuscript at my piano. You still do this?
Absolutely.
And how does it feel? Do you have more freedom, or how would you describe
it's just
it?
The only way I know how, the only way I can actually get the ideas down. It would be absolutely hopeless for me to be at a computer and try and tap it in. That wouldn't work. I have to have that physical thing of having the paper and the pen and writing it down. It's very messy and it's all a bit muddled, but it's there on the page and I can see it and I can work with that. And it's a traditional way of doing it. It's the classical way of doing it, but it's the only way I know. And it works because you've got something to look at on the page, and then you can think about, does it really work? Play it against a picture, look at it in different orchestrations, and see if it works. And I've chucked a lot away as well. A lot of first ideas don't go down, don't even sometimes reach the director, but at least you've got something to be going on with.
And it's nice what you say that, because you say like, you got something to look at, but you also got a lot of things not to look at, because you can focus on your piano and on your paper, and it feels like a really pure version of making them music again.
It is a pure version. Some composers, my composition teacher would just sit at a desk. He didn't even need a piano. He could hear it all in his head. I like to be at the piano. I like to test things out, and I think with a film, you need to be at the piano. You need to be able to see it and play it at the same time. But a lot of composers and classical composers through the generations, they sat at a desk. They didn't have computers and they didn't have Logic and, Sibelius and all these wonderful things. They didn't have that. But look at the great body of music that they wrote.
So I would like to open the floor for some questions from the audience, if there are. I will try to see all the questions. I see there one, yeah. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that we just start here, and then we will do the tour.
Hello, Mrs. Wiseman. I'm Daniel Azevedo. I'm with Film Score Monthly, the magazine. First of all, I must say that your outfit is as stylish as your music.
Thank you very much. And I'm very grateful for you saying that, because I took a long time to decide what to wear today. I'm pleased I made the right choice. It could have gone wrong. It could have gone very wrong.
Well, I love your score for Middletown, which features some exquisite writing for violin. Would you kindly share with us some memories about working on that movie?
Yeah, Middletown we recorded in Ireland, in a fantastic recording studio in the middle of nowhere in Ireland. A lovely director that I've worked with a couple of times. Again, a very dark score, but the idea of having the violin solo as the key to it was the hook. You know, we're talking about finding a hook, and that violin solo was the hook. That was the main theme. And I was able to use that throughout. Brilliant. I'm trying to remember the name of the violinist, but I remember it was played beautifully. Thank you very much. Yeah, fantastic. It was Jack Liebeck. And he played beautifully on that. But I think, again, it's, you know, it was finding the heart and soul of that film. For that it was the violin. We recorded it in an Irish studio because it was partly funded by the Irish Film Board. And the studio was in the middle of nowhere in the countryside in Ireland. And we looked at the studio, and there were cows and sheep around. It was so unlike a recording studio in London where, you know, you're kind of bunkered away in the middle, in the dark. It was very beautiful. And thank you for remembering that score, because it was a small film, but a very, very enjoyable one. So I thank you for remembering it.
Other questions? Please raise your hands again. I will take maybe first in the back, so you will... En ja, ik mag niet vergeten dat van achter ook mensen zitten.
Hi.
Good catch.
Thank you. I'm Adieska Chase. I'm a composer. I've admired you for so long, so it's really lovely to hear you talk. You actually touched on this at the beginning of your talk, but have you noticed that expectations around composing have shifted over time as more of the process becomes computer generated? You did mention about that. Mine is more to do with the time frame and the budget that is allowed for films. I know that you also said that you only had a few weeks to score Wilde, but particularly in recent years, have you noticed a shift in budgets and timeframes, and how do you approach that conversation when it comes to starting a project?
It's always been quick. I mean, from when I started, I can't remember a time when I've ever thought, oh, I've got loads of time for this, and what am I going to do with all this time? You know, I don't ever remember having that thought in my head. So it's always quick, and there's always a deadline. You just have to get used to working fast. And you have to learn that skill of how to work fast and just get the ideas down. And it may be that you don't write the best music on that day and you chuck it out and you throw it away and you start again the next day. But it's just getting the ideas down. And as far as budget goes, whether that's changed, again, not really. Producers always want music very, very cheap, very, very quick, and we want it by Friday. You know, unfortunately, that's the way it is. You have to fight a little bit to get what you need. You have to be quite strong-willed and try not to get too sort of walked over, because, you know, producers and directors, they try to understand the music-making process as best they can, but it's not in their world. They don't know that you've got to get it scored and you've got to write it, and they think it drops from trees sometimes. You know, oh, it's just going to, you know, gosh, it's just a theme and it's going to come by Friday and it'll be orchestrated. You know, they don't have the understanding that we have as composers what is actually required, and it doesn't, unfortunately. If only it did. If only you could just press a button, you know, world-class theme, please, you know, button A. Yeah. That would be great, but it doesn't work like that. So you have to just be, and it happens with experience, just to know what to ask for when you're taking on a job.
I've had it really recently. I've got a job with a really quick turnaround. They've all been very lovely, and I have put my foot down on things and made things clear of, I'm doing my best. And like you said, the adrenaline kicks in. I guess I was just interested because I'm wondering if everyone working on computers now, they do think it'll just take a click of a button, but it's refreshing to hear that it's been happening like no matter what.
It's not just you.
And that you do just need to keep going that way, yeah.
You have to, the computers help in many ways, but in other ways they are, it's difficult because everything can be done so quickly, and it's the same with editing. You know, they can edit things so quickly now, so they can change things right up to the day you're recording, and you can get new cuts 2 days before you're going into record, and then everything's thrown into confusion and panic. But nobody understands that it's going to be a problem. You just have to roll with it as best you can, and if things become impossible, just say, this is impossible. I cannot do it. And you're going to have to find another day. You're going to have to find a little bit more money. And they will. They really will. Because if you say it's impossible and you've got to a stage where nothing's going to work, and they're not going to not have any music on their film or their TV show, so they'll find a way. And there's always a contingency in a budget for things that might go wrong. So they're never completely out of money, however much they will say, oh, we've run out. There will always be something. Just keep going and make sure that you let people know if it becomes impossible.
Thank you. Other questions? Maybe we go straight for, because otherwise I forget the back. So I will make sure that I will come to the front as well. But sorry, hè? Anders vergeet ik het echt. Does the box work? The box is broken. But
I can hear you.
Can you shout? Thank you.
The music is so elegant and beautiful. Has there been a project that's been specifically challenging to you? And, what's the most challenging project you've ever had to face?
There have been many that are challenging for different reasons, actually. To Olivia was challenging because the film I spoke about Roald Dahl, because I couldn't find the theme straight away, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to find the theme, but you just sort of keep going until it happens. That was challenging. Wilde was challenging because it was so fast. Wolf Hall was challenging because the director was so intensely involved with the music that everything was examined through his microscope. So I had to rewrite and do a lot of changes right up to the day, but also in the studio, making sure everything was to his particular taste as well. You know, you're working with a lot of different characters in film, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. So there wasn't one that was particular. I mean, Arsène Lupin was challenging because the director didn't speak English and I didn't speak very good French, so the communication was a little bit tricky, but you get round things. So I don't think there's ever a project that doesn't have some challenge. Nothing is ever plain sailing, as in life. You know, things never are plain sailing. There's always something. You know, you go for a gorgeous picnic in the park and you're sitting down and then there's wasps, you know, and they're getting in the way. And you just flag, get away, get rid of the wasps. And they spoil your lovely picnic.
Yeah.
So there's always something that might just throw you off course. But as a composer, you just have to try and keep, because it's only you. You know, I don't work with a big team of people. You know, I have my husband who looks after the technical side and, the management side. But the actual writing has to come from you, and you have to deliver it. There's nobody else that's going to write it for you. So you just have to try and keep that intact, and that you preserve your time to do that, have confidence in it, and make sure that you do the best that you can. Ask questions. Nobody ever minds you asking questions. And nobody ever minds, another thing I found, giving them options. You know, more than one theme is never not a good thing, because somebody will you can have difference of opinion, but people love options in this industry, and so they like choice, and that's also, it's not so bad. It's more work for you, but sometimes it can work out that it's people feel privileged that you've taken the time to write. Give them 1, 2, 3 different ideas. They feel touched that you've taken the time to do that.
And it helps in the communication as well, because you can talk about the theme number 2 or theme
why
number
not
3.
why you didn't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, on Father Brown, a long-running series that I've done for the BBC, I sat down, and this was many years ago. I don't know why I did it, but I wrote 10 different themes, and I invited them over because they were only 30 seconds long, so it's not a vast amount of music. And some I knew were right and some I knew were wrong, but I put a few together, and we sat down and we had a really lovely creative session. Everybody sat down, and one had a kind of Ealing comedy feel, and the producer said, I like number 10 because it's got that Ealing comedy feel, and the other producer wasn't sure, but she stuck with her guns, and that has been the theme, and it's been running for 14 series with exactly the same theme on it. So it was worth the effort to put in to get that theme right.
Great. Other questions? I come now to the front again. Here, this Mr. with this. Does the box work?
You can,
Nee,
we'll
it doesn't work. It doesn't work, hè? Voilà, ofwel? Nee. Voilà. Ga je gang.
Thank you very much for answering all these questions. I'm a big admirer of your craftsmanship. I'm Tobias. I'm a composer teacher from the Netherlands. And I have one question also on behalf of my students. I noticed that there is a fear of repetition amongst students. They sometimes come up with new themes, new musical ideas every 8 to 16 bars. What would you recommend these students?
Don't do it.
Okay.
Definitely not. Too many themes. I mean, simplicity is the key in film. Getting a good theme. I used to do that, though, when I was a student, because when you're young, you feel like you need to sort of show how clever you are and good you are at your job, and you want to show off, and I can do this and I can do that, and I can also do this and even this, and you're sort of jumping between styles. But it's distracting in film because you don't want to take away from the drama. You want to support it, but you're not center stage. You need to write one theme for a film that's good. That's all you need. You need one theme, and then it's variations or it's other musical ideas, but it's one theme. That's all you need. And if you have too many themes, and it's the same in a musical. If you ever go to a musical, on the stage, you don't want 8, 9, 10 songs that are all competing with each other to be the hit song. You want one that people are going to come away and sing. Too many themes is not a good idea. It's okay.
Other questions? If not, then I have still meneer, yeah.
Could you also tell us a little bit about your classical compositions which you've done? You've done quite a bit for the royal family, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the royal, most recently at the coronation, writing the 2 gospel alleluias for the coronation of the king was completely magical and a brilliant experience. I was asked just before the Christmas of the coronation to write the 2 alleluias, and I was sent the text, and they were going to be written for the Westminster Abbey Choir and organist. And then just after Christmas, I got another call saying the king would really love a gospel choir at the coronation. Would you mind terribly rewriting the second Hallelujah for a gospel choir? But fortunately, it could have been a really difficult thing to do because it had already been written very classically. But fortunately, it was in 6/8, if you know that, had that kind of rhythm to it. And it was naturally, you could sort of swing along to it and move with it. So it naturally, fortunately, lent itself to a new arrangement for gospel choir. Then I got a message saying, the king, because I know quite a lot of gospel singers, so I said, would you like me to suggest some gospel singers to sing it on the day? And he said, no, I know exactly who I want. And it was the gospel choir that sung at Harry and Meghan's wedding. And he obviously loved their performance. He would like them. They were called the Ascension Choir and they came along, and we spent some time working on it because unlike classical singers, they don't read music, so they had to learn it line by line. Oh, wow. And lock it in, memorize it, and then deliver it on the day at Westminster Abbey in front of an audience of billions. I can't imagine how many were watching on that day. And they did it to perfection. And I had the huge honour of actually being in Westminster Abbey to experience that, along with the other 11 composers that were commissioned to write the various different aspects of the coronation. So, yeah, completely thrilling, memorable moment, never to be forgotten. Definitely.
And maybe another question. I have maybe one question left. If nobody else is there, because we touched on it, and I think it's maybe also an important person to mention. You have a very close collaboration with your husband.
I do.
As well. Can you just maybe yeah, of course, yeah. I only now think of the devil side. I mean professionally, of course. So maybe you can run us through the professional collaboration you have.
Well,
with your husband,
another thing when people say, what do you need to be a composer? You probably need you need Tony. You as my husband. Now, I'm very fortunate that my husband takes care of the technical side, the management side. This is a great gift because you are very much in need of support when you're doing these projects. It's hard if you're not. Yeah. You can do it, of course you can, but you need to have the support, and also just to have somebody to share ideas with. Sometimes I'm playing away at the piano and Tony's watching football or something, and he'll come in and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm not sure about that. It sounds a bit like remember that theme you wrote 10 years ago for that?" And I've completely forgotten it. He's got a kind of almost photographic memory of music that I have written over the years. It's extraordinary. I've forgotten it. I mean, when this lovely gentleman mentioned Middletown, you kindly reminded me the violinist. I do have to slightly forget each project and move on, because otherwise there's a danger that things will get repeated or remembered and just regurgitated, and you don't want that. You want everything to be fresh and new. So I do have to slightly put things to one side when I've finished. But Tony has got this slightly, photographic memory, will remind me of things. And also sometimes I might be playing something at the piano and orchestrating it out on my keyboards and working it out, and he'll just pop his nose through the kitchen or something and say, "Oh, yeah, that's sounding good." And that's sort of all you need to carry on and feel confident that you're along the right line. And when a director comes over and listens, it's a very different thing, because you know that they're going to be listening with different ears. But to have your partner, your husband, your wife, whoever it is, helping is
and supporting.
And supporting is incredibly, amazing and wonderful. And I think, music is a solo job. Writing is a solo job. We're locked away in our own rooms writing, and then we're in the studio locked away, so to have some, and then to come to somewhere like this and have your music played, and people that are so engaged with what you do, makes it all worthwhile. And so thank you all for just coming today and being at the concert and supporting what we do, because without that you never sort of get any feedback from what you're doing. So this is very, very special.
With these words, I'm not going to add anything else. I would like to thank Debbie Wiseman.
Thank you.